we thought we were it. I mean, nobody was doing it better than us. We were in the Cold War again, and we never thought we were going to go to a desert to fight. So when we did, our unit got a citation for keeping, I think we were supporting 5 or 6 different units, and our OR rate for those units was like 98%. We did excellent. And when the Army couldn't even do that in garrison in the past, and people were stealing parts from other aircraft, we didn't do that. We fixed the aircraft, and we were proud of the maintenance we did. And the people that we had, like I said, are still bonded till today.
In celebration of Veterans Day, today we're going to get with a Army aviation mechanic who proudly served our nation for over 20 years. Watch me light this bonfire, but stay for his story.
Well, I joined the Army in 1986, so a long time ago. Came out of high school. Didn't really, grew up in Ohio, didn't really see much future there. The steel mills had closed, and I grew up with a military family. I had 7 uncles who were in the military. So I was like, they were Marines, and I didn't really want to be a Marine. So I joined the Army, and I wanted to do something a little different. And they offered I was an electrician. Then just before I got ready to graduate, they told me that I was going to go to another school before I left. And I was headed to Germany, part of my enlistment. And I was like, okay, what's this? And they said, well, it's not going to start for like 30 days. So we got 30 days to run around Fort Eustis for a while. But we went out to the airfield and we learned how to work on the Apaches as electricians. For about 4 to 6 weeks we were out there. And the people I went to school with ended up being in my unit. We were the first unit. This is back in the day when transportation units were changing into aviation. So my orders read 394 trans. I'm like, what am I doing here? Got sent to first AD in Germany, and they were kind of teasing me, like, well, maybe you're working on engines or something in a tank. And I was like, okay, because they didn't realize where the helicopters were. We don't have any. So I get to Illesheim, Germany, and there were no aircraft there. The Cobras that were there had moved, and it was just an infantry post. So it was true. I had no aircraft to work on. And the unit was basically being built up. It was a hodgepodge of people from Nuremberg and Ansbach. And we to this day still are a group on Facebook now. We do reunions every year.
Oh, that's cool.
Because that time period, for some reason, for all these different guys, they went their 2 to 3 years, went their own way. Look at Illesheim, Germany in the mid 80s to early 90s as the best time they had in the Army. And it's really strange, but it was probably because we all came together and we were all the initial people. And then we got to work on the Apaches. I was on the advanced team to bring the first Apaches into Europe, 2.6 Cav. And there was me and another guy were avionics, and I was an electrician. And we had 21 aircraft to put together, 18 Apache and 3 Blackhawk. And we did it in 18 days.
Wow.
Yep. And that got me excited. I was like, this is what the Army is all about, working in the field, doing my job, not sweeping up the airfield or filling sandbags. And that's what I enjoyed. I liked doing that kind of stuff.
How has the Army changed from the 80s to the 2000s?
So in the 80s, the Army was changing from the Vietnam era soldiers. We were coming in. A lot of the senior people were Vietnam guys, but there was a lack of combat veterans in the E6, E7, E5 spots. It was only a few years, like I said, we were 3rd, 4th year of aviation being done. So it was a lot of new stuff going on and change. So what the older soldiers were talking about then, it's kind of like me talking about now, the changes that are going on. I see better training. I see better grasp of what we're supposed to be doing now.
Okay.
So the training that we did, we didn't have funds. So we didn't leave the hangar to go out to the field initially. We stayed in, put sandbags on the windows, and pretended to be in the field. Didn't have a lot of money back in the early 80s, or we'll say late 80s at the time. And nowadays, training is the focus. All the NTC, JRTC, the Grafenwehr rotations, Vilsec, going to all these different places. Training has built up. We did reforgers back then, return of forces to Germany. So when I got to Germany, like I said, we had no helicopters. They did a reforger. They set us a contact team up to watch. The Apaches flew in. I think we were in Hanover or somewhere up north, and we got to observe how the guys from Texas were maintaining the aircraft. What they did, it was kind of like a big AER for us. We're seeing what the lessons learned were. So we were going to get these helicopters because they had issues with them. They were breaking down. They were taking cannibalism parts off one aircraft to make another, and I didn't understand that as a young soldier. I was like, why? Yeah. What's happening? When the aircraft came in, they SD'd me, special duty, to the 26 Cat. I was in the AVIM. So we became Alpha Company 7th of the 159th. I'm not sure if you heard about it in Europe. It was there for a long time. And I spent 30 days working with an E5. I was only a PFC at the time. And we worked on stabilators. That was our whole job for 30 days because the Apache had a stabulator problem. They had 4 relays in the back that would corrode or not function properly. And we had to go through and make sure each one of them was functioning. And we did that. And we worked with some civilians. There was a card we had to fill out. It was called a 40-alpha. And we had to send that to the manufacturer. Each time we worked on something or took a part off, we had to write down the codes and the hours and all that stuff. A lot of detailed work on it, trying to get the information on why something broke, when it broke, and maybe how it broke.
Yeah, everything back in the day was all paper, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was all paper.
No computers.
Right, all paperwork. The Dash 13s were all lined thing, and it was by pencil. You could not use pen. Pen was for the TIs, and you weren't allowed to erase. So if you made a mistake, you had to tear up that paper, fill it out again, and then go get, if somebody else, because more than one person could sign on a piece of paper, or the card in the form, and we'd have to go find, if you signed off on it yesterday, I'd have to fill out everything and then go get your signature again, and then get the TI again and fill it out. So we had to have neat handwriting, print everything, no cursive. You had to be very particular on how we had the mechanical pencils. So it was routine for us. We learned at school, and it was, taught to us, and we did that.
When I first joined, I think I was at the tail end of papers going into computers. So 2007. Apaches, I'm assuming, have tons of manuals, right? Do you have just a room full of manuals, just paper everywhere?
No, well, the TIs did. The TIs would have the room full of the manuals, right? Each section, like I was the avionics electrical, we had so it was a little different. The IETMs, we had chapters, or volumes, you would say. So we had to have the whole volume for the aircraft, right? So as an electrician, we worked on different aircraft. So we had each volume of every aircraft type. And volume 9 and 8 were the ones electrical was 9, 8 was instruments. And then each section or MOS would have their own volume per se.
That actually seems like it makes a lot of sense, honestly, rather than just having an entire manual.
Right.
You get your piece of the pie and you do your thing.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of go back to what you were talking about. When I think of just the time that I've joined, so from 2007 to now, the Army has changed pretty drastically. And when I hear of older veterans like yourself, I think of just being harder for whatever reason. Is that a true statement you would say?
It was different. There are different things that are hard now that were not maybe even thought of back then. We stood in line for chow, paid with cash. You know, we didn't have credit cards, debit cards. Everything was paper. So we weren't we weren't rushed. So if you had something to do, you were given time to do it. Does that make sense?
Like payday activities.
Payday
like actually
activities, going and doing them. But if you had a task, tasks were done in a way that wasn't by email. We had no email, so everything was face to face. So they had meetings, lots of meetings, but the information was given. So if we had a meeting in the morning, it was given to your sergeant, and then the chain of command was utilized. And you didn't get 10 different things at once. They gave you one task, two tasks. You did them, and then you came back, and maybe in the afternoon you got some more tasks. But it was less rushed, if that makes sense. Now it seems like everybody is expecting an answer back. You get an email and you expect an answer back immediately.
Yeah, 100%. I see that.
Yeah.
I'm like almost glued to my phone.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like if I don't know if it's a rush thing or it feels like an obligation where I have to respond right then and there, or I miss something, and I don't know if it's just the instant time that we're in.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, because I'm really face-to-face type of person. I want to. That's how it was. You know, platoon sergeants, first sergeants, they gave the direction to people face-to-face, the orders. They talked to you. It wasn't by email. They didn't give out the daily events by email. They didn't put it on. We had formations, ration cards in Germany. We had inspections. Let me see ration cards. See if you're using it for. You don't smoke. Why are you buying cartons of cigarettes?
Right.
That kind of stuff. It was all personal. It was right up front. They didn't give briefings to you on an email and say, hey, we got this coming up or whatever. It was out in front of you, and it was open to questions. So if they put out this is happening and you had a question, you could ask it right then and there in front of everybody. So everybody knew about it at that time. But if you didn't have an answer, the commander was like, I get back to you, or the platoon sergeant will get back to you. And they did. It wasn't a forgotten email or something down the road or anything like that. It was different. So that's what I'm saying. It wasn't harder. We had to do manual typing. So we have all the S1s, S2s, S3s, right? Even supply. So I believe that the Army's changed in the fact that the soldier, the mechanic, they have to do a lot more than we actually had to do in the past. So when we filled out green tags, we only filled out a certain portion and put some codes. All this other information that might be requested by supply, we had supply technicians who we would give the card to and the part to, and they would actually fill it out because they had the other information. We didn't have that, and plus we didn't have the time. We had to go back and work on the aircraft. If we had to turn a leave in, all we did to the S1 was give them our address that we were going to and the dates we wanted to go, and they typed it up because we used carbon paper for typing up the leave, and the S1s didn't want it to be messed up. So if we're typing, we're wasting paper and doing all this. They would type it up one time, and then they put it in their file, and it would be ready there at the CQ when you came and you would sign out. But you never filled out a leave form until a couple of years later. Now we're doing all the S1 functions. We have to fill out all these forms and documents. So more was put on. That's why I think it's maybe a little harder, because you have to fill out all the information and you're still not used to it. Memorandums. You got to do the memorandum. The memorandums were always done by somebody else. You gave them information, and the person that was used to it that would do them. Yeah. They were so Foxtrots and Novembers, they're always in the same section now.
What are they?
Foxtrot is an electrician, November is avionics, and we were in the same section, but we didn't do each other's job. They do a lot of, job crossover. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was you didn't do somebody else's job. You might help somebody, but you didn't do it. If I was the only Foxtrot in the company, I wasn't going on leave. I wasn't going anywhere. I'm the only one doing the job. There was no person that was going to handle that. It was that way for every section, S1, S3. It didn't matter. You had one particular person doing that job, and everybody would just feed them information. Now it seems like everybody has to do more to do that job. So that's the difference I see. Nowadays, it seems like more responsibility is given to people.
Yeah. I definitely see residuals of what you're talking about still today.
Yeah.
Do you think people were better communicators back then because everything was face to face? So, like, if you didn't get your information out, then people just didn't know.
I would say it depended on the person.
Okay.
The the interpretation of what you hear is always going to be the downfall, playing the game of telephone, right? So even though you have a meeting and it's face to face, if you don't understand what that person's telling you, the first sergeant or the commander, you might not get the full information because what you think is important might not be what was actually put out.
Yeah.
Or you might not have relayed information that was critical to you because the person in charge of you may not be. So I had Novembers, in charge of me, E6s. They might not have known what I needed to know because they weren't as involved in our job. So it depended on the person and what they understood of what you needed. So we had a lot of miscommunication, like, telephone. We didn't have cell phones. So when alerts were put out, you had to call a landline. So if you're waking up at 2 a.m. and you call the wrong number, you don't know you called the wrong number because you don't have, it's a dial. I don't know the dial. So it's ringing and ringing. So you just call the next person and tell them I couldn't get a hold of that guy. Well, everybody shows up for the alert except the guy you missed. And then he comes in and we're like, nobody called me. That's the kind of stuff that we had issues with. And it was kind of funny because we weren't really, we didn't have this long, time of war. We hadn't gone to the desert yet. So we were still Cold War. We were garrison people and we were practicing for it, but we were all young. I mean, I was 18 when I went to Germany and most everybody was between 18 and 24. So we were just learning all this stuff and it depended on what we understood. Some people just pick up the phone, hear alert and not call anybody. And they show up and you're like, where's the rest of your chain? Oh, I forgot. And then you're stuck,
I think we have almost the opposite problem now where we get so much information through emails and text message that people don't even like what is important. Like you can read an email or you just miss the information completely because there's just like a fire hydrant of information just coming at all times. So I don't know which one's better. I guess they both have their pros and cons.
That's what I'm saying. We had it hard in one way and not as hard in another way, right? Work was the main thing. That was everybody's focus. If you didn't have work, you were found work, details and stuff like that. I don't think that's true anymore. There's a lot of personal time. So we didn't always look favorably about the guy that was going to a college class or getting time off to go to college. Well, we were selected to go to a deployment. They wouldn't send whole groups. It would be one or two people out of each section. So the contact teams were very limited. So not everybody went. So if you were going to college and I wasn't, I'm getting sent on a deployment. So that had some problems too. It wasn't shared equitably. So a lot of supervisors didn't like their soldiers going to college. It wasn't as pronounced now where everybody's supposed to get their education. And I even learned about that later on. I didn't go to college until my last 2 years in the Army. I had like one or two classes, but I finished my associate's degree at the end because it was almost ingrained in me that you come missions first. I mean, it was always work. You don't go do those other things. Didn't matter if you were trying to get ahead or anything like that. So it was limited.
What about hazing? So like for me, I'll give you an example, actually a couple of examples. And this was in the beginning of my career and your end of your career.
Yeah.
So I probably saw the first couple of years it was still, I wouldn't say it's okay, but it was still there. But nowadays it's super frowned upon. But I remember PP2, one of the traditions was you get promoted to the next rank. Anybody that outranks you is allowed to hit you, basically. And I joined the Army at 129 pounds, underweight, got a waiver to come in, and people lined up to basically punch the shit out of me as hard as they could. That was one. from so that was E2 to E3, and then E3 to E4, I got hogtied, which
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with any of this, but I got hogtied, and then right before the ceremony, my promotion ceremony, they were cutting off the zip ties and cut my finger, and then I had to go to the hospital.
Yeah. It's hazing. Hazing was there. I've been part of it on both sides, uh, but it depended. You had to be smart about it because people who took it too far were the ones that you didn't really trust, though, as a soldier. I mean, I don't know if I'm making it clear. These guys would be suspect in your unit on doing their job right or anything, and then they would be the guys that would be the ones leading the charge to do this or that. It was like they were enthusiastic about those kind of things. We had the wings when you got, so when I came in, you didn't get your aviation wings. You had to put in for orders and then you would get them. So we got our wings when I was in Germany and they pounded them into your chest and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm thinking as a private, what's the purpose of this? Right. And it was just their thing. And I was like, okay, I don't really agree with it. It happened and I was good. When I got a couple of years later, about 6 years later, I get promoted to E5 and they did the gauntlet, what they called it, 2 lines, and we three of us had to go through it. And if you stayed to one side or the other, if you were zigzag, you could get through it with minimal. But if you were getting clobbered, if they closed in on you, like you said, you get beat up and punched the heck in the back. So went through that, and the next day my platoon sergeant wasn't there. He come in. He was old school, E7, and I'm sitting on the desk, and we wear our rank. At that time, we were wearing it on our lapels, right? He comes in and he hauls off with, I say, good morning. And he's standing there, looks at me, and he hit me in my shoulder right here where he used to have his stripes. He about knocked me off the desk. I was sitting on the edge of the desk. And he goes, welcome to the Corps. And I was like, huh? Oh, got it. Thank you. Didn't understand. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting it. So that was the only thing he did. That was his thing. And that's what I took from it. You can have a tradition without it being detrimental to the person you're doing it to. With my soldiers, and as they got promoted, my team, they like to wrestle, and that's what they would do. They would wrestle you after you got promoted. They would wrestle you, give you a noogie or whatever, and water. So I had to calm them down because my guys were very rambunctious and PT studs, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, keep it. Yeah, I said, if you hurt each other, it's not going to be good. I said, it's for fun. It's for bringing them into, bringing that last guy up into your ranks, right? I said, it's not to hurt him or abuse him. It's to become more of a bonding.
Yeah.
That's what I looked at it. Now, there are people that just took it way too far, and sometimes you'd have to step in, but nowadays, I mean, it's really critical not to do it because people don't know how to restrain themselves. I think because I don't know, it just became too harsh, I guess.
Hazing, obviously, like the point of it is really to bring people together and just
Mhm.
a little closer. Do you think we lost some of that just over the years?
Yeah,
Because if we don't do it,
we lost a lot of traditions that I went through. The sergeant's time training, we had NCOPD. Those type of things are not the same anymore. Even at the end of my career, the sergeant majors, they weren't putting out information for. It was just like this is my day to put it out. And it wasn't the same. The sergeant majors who gave out my first like NCOPDs or my little things like that. They were there actually asking questions back at you. They wanted to get to know you. So that bonding has been lost. Traditions like going to lunch, people still do it, but I think as a command, we have this time we're going to go to lunch together, or we have this group time together. That kind of stuff tends to go away. There's a lot of good commanders and a lot of good first sergeants that I've seen in the past here, but it's not consistent. Some of them have forgotten. I had a sergeant major that was leaving, probably 2000. 8 or 9, and I was working in the CMO, and I wanted to do a luncheon for him. We did some car washes to get some money and everything because I wanted it to be a free lunch for everybody that came. And the sergeant major who was taking over was like, "Why? I'll just take him out to lunch." Me and some of the other guys, and I was like, "Well, he's got 30 years in the Army, and you're just going to take him to lunch?" We brought his family in. Everybody wanted to give him the plaques or whatever. We had like almost 100 people show up.
Oh, wow.
We did it at a barbecue place here on post, had it catered, and it was paid for. We got like $500 and had stuff out, and it was a buffet type thing. And people were in standing room only to say goodbye to him. And I was like, that's what this is about. Because if I'm doing this for him, that guy that's private E5 or whatever, he's going to see that coming up, and he's going to understand that it's more than just the Army. There's a family, a bond that's supposed to be there. I think sometimes we lose that. It's a lot of guys are individuals. They don't that bond. It's teamwork in the mission, but there's no "I'm here for you" type thing. A lot of people do it, but I think it's missing more than it used to be.
So it's been 14 years since you retired. Is there a specific, like, when you think of the Army in the entirety, is there something that just pops in your mind, like, this was my best experience?
It goes back to that first duty station working on Apaches. We thought we were it. I mean, nobody was doing it better than us. We were in the Cold War again, and we never thought we were going to go to a desert to fight. So when we did, our unit got a citation for keeping, I think we were supporting 5 or 6 different units, and our OR rate for those units was like 98%. We did excellent. And when the Army couldn't even do that in garrison in the past, and people were stealing parts from other aircraft, we didn't do that. We fixed the aircraft, and we were proud of the maintenance we did. And the people that we had, like I said, are still bonded till today. We just grew together, and that is when they asked me in retirement what my favorite unit was, I put down my first unit, Alpha Company. It was just that good.
I think whatever your first assignment is typically how you grow up in the rest of your military. It kind of like molds you into this soldier, whatever that soldier is. Yeah. And then you just kind of carry those traditions or those specific boundaries the rest of your career. So like when I wear a uniform, sounds silly and it's not necessarily right or wrong, but like the pins in your pocket, we have a little pin pouch right here.
Yeah.
You don't put the little clip on the outside, you put it all the way inside. And like small things like that are stupid, but that's what I've learned. And that's kind of the things that I have taken with me from my first unit.
Yeah. The good or bad habits tend to come out. Bad habit from my first unit, they didn't really care about the people in, like, again, mission was always first, right? So we go to the desert, and I'm asked to be on the advance party, and my platoon sergeant asked me, "Is there anything keeping you from going tonight?" basically. And I'm like, my wife's pregnant and she doesn't drive, so I just need to make sure somebody from the FRG or whatever, we did have FRGs back then, to make sure she gets to her appointments. He goes, "We'll take care of that." So I went. Well, her brother passed away 2 days later, and they told her not to tell me about it, and they didn't tell me about it. And then when my soldiers, my squad got to, 2 weeks later, the rest of the company showed up. My guys wouldn't even talk to me. "We're not allowed to talk to you." "Why?" "You got to talk to the squad leader." Then he goes, "Your brother died." I said, "I don't have a brother." He goes, "Well, your brother-in-law." I said, "Which one?" The information flow was really horrible, and they didn't tell me that she was in the hospital, and the war ended. And then the doctor actually in Germany put out a Red Cross message, and my platoon leader basically read me the riot. He goes, "You'll go home for 14 days, but you will come back here. You did this. You knew all about this. You instigated this." I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I just found out about it. You read the message to me." He goes, "Your wife didn't call you?" I'm like, "No, she's called me twice because whatever." And we didn't have a lot of good communication back then, but they basically told her not to talk to me about it. And I thought that was the worst way to handle it. And that actually made me change the way I helped other soldiers in the future. I made sure anybody that got a Red Cross message was totally helped out. They had all the information on what they needed. So that bad experience actually didn't make me bitter. It made me more proactive in making sure my soldiers and other soldiers, not even mine, got the assistance they needed. And by the end of the time I got out of the Army, I had 2 more emergency leave type situations, and the Army had changed, and they were very helpful. I had commanders, captains, and majors. I even had a colonel, a chaplain. My mom, for some reason, when my father died, put down you need a chaplain present. My major tried to find me a chaplain for almost 6 hours, from 3 o'clock in the morning till 9. And when he couldn't, he just sent me back to my unit. We were deployed in a field. And by the time I got back to 4-hour drive, time I got back to the post, there's a full bird colonel chaplain sitting there waiting for me. And I was like, sir, you didn't have, he goes, no, they said you were needed, or I was needed. And he goes, just sit here and talk to me for a few minutes. And I was just getting my travel orders and stuff. So the system in place always worked. It was always the people that enacted the system that didn't work. And I think it's a lot better now.
I had a soldier in Korea, and this soldier, the entire time, so Korea's a 10-month or a year rotation.
Right.
This entire time that I was there, he was expecting a child. And during this time, he's buying, giving his wife money, or, they're buying stuff for the baby, setting up a nursery. Eventually, the soldier is like pretty close to the due date, and he's putting in his leave and excited, all this, and he gets a phone call from his wife saying that the baby passed away, and that she cremated the baby, and basically did all this stuff without him, just because it was kind of an emergency. So that they cremated the baby, and then that she wanted to make a necklace, because you can take ashes and do different things with them. So once I found wind of it, I was like, let me call Red Cross. Actually, at first I was like, hey, did anybody set up a Red Cross so we can get you out of here? We're in Korea. You get a free flight. Like, we can get you out, no problem. And the soldier's like, my family doesn't know how to do it. I said, I'll do that. I'll call the Red Cross up and figure it out. So I call up Red Cross. I give them all the information that I had at the time. And basically, the Red Cross person was like, what hospital? And whatever hospital I gave them, they don't have any records of it. So I'm like, okay. So then, a couple hours later, I'm trying to get more and more information, because they have to verify that the situation.
Right.
Needless to say that the entirety of that pregnancy was all fake. So the soldier not only, had to mentally go through a birth, a death, cremation, all within his mind in a matter of like a day or something. That is insane.
Yep. And then a relationship that's not based on fact.
Yeah. So Red Cross really does a lot for a lot of families, honestly.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Sometimes some of the Army stories that you hear it's just wild. But to have like organizations like the Red Cross,
AER helped me out. So young couple, I got married in Germany, had a son, came to Savannah in Hunter Army Airfield, and my wife doesn't know how. We have a checking account, now it's combined, and writing checks and taking out of an ATM, right? ATMs are not new, but they're kind of, so see $100 in the account, she writes a check for $100, I pull out money for it. Now we don't have money. Common mistake for young people. AER is there. They helped me, gave me money for groceries to get me to the paycheck, paid them back. So those type of things weren't ever explained to us. You go to a board, you read the AER, what it is, but nobody tells you what they can do for you.
Right, in practice.
Right. They don't tell you about the Red Cross. We don't get classes on how to use the systems that are in place. You learn about them from seeing somebody else go through it. You learn from your own mistakes. AER was a wonderful thing. I gave to AER for years. I still give to them. They send me the letters in the mail, retired sergeant, still fund them, because I believe that's one of the organizations that's really solid to help people. So
That's one thing that the Army, probably just the military in general, does very well.
yeah,
Is that we take care of our own, or at least we try. If you don't have that information, you can either research it through some type of website or go to the actual professionals on posts, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction at least. So to wrap this up, I know we're running a little long. Um, really, I have another question or two.
okay.
Would you have joined the Army again if you could do it all over again?
Yes, I would. I mean, that's why I stayed. I'm still an Army civilian. It's because they're around. They couldn't find what I was looking for outside in the commercial world, civilian world. Um, this place provides everything I ever needed. So I don't want to say I'm institutionalized, but
You're definitely institutionalized.
I still provide and get what I need. I provide what I know to people, and I get what I need from other people. You know, the camaraderie. We There's no other job where you can sit and talk to each other and each day, and the job isn't really. You can take the stress away from somebody. Sometimes you can put the stress on somebody by telling them they need to do their job better. But here it's the day-to-day interactions. That's what I miss. Civilians don't interact like we do. I mean, it's something we get lost. You know, we provide a lot of comfort to each other that we don't realize. So
And the last question would be, if you had to give somebody a word of advice just of your entire experience, because you joined when you were 18,
yeah,
what would you tell them?
you can find stability in the military as long as you want stability. If you are unsure of yourself, you're going to be unsure no matter where you go. You need to find yourself and dedicate to what you want to do. You know, sometimes that's harder. It takes time, but don't don't falter. Once you find something you like to do it. I like the Army. I don't have any regrets. I did not force my children to take up the Army. I forced them to find what they wanted to do, and they're happy with what they're doing now. My kids are 24 and 33, so they found something they like to do, and they're doing it, and they're putting their effort into it. Whatever it is you like to do, that's what you need to find.